Let's do one more main topic. And our fourth and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Sam Sprill, who writes, Paul Feig, director of Bridesmaids, recently did an interview stating that there will be no Bridesmaids sequel, saying that there's no emotional and engaging story left to tell. Like the first movie, Bridesmaids was a critical and financial success. Why not take the risk for a sequel? What are your thoughts? All right, thanks for sending that in, Sam. And listen, Bridesmaids, oh look, there's no other way to put it. Bridesmaids is awesome. Bridesmaids is a wonderful, if you guys remember and had watched me for long enough to know just before that movie came out, I was a little skeptical of it, even though I thought the trailers were quite funny. I was still a little bit skeptical of it. I loved this movie. I thought it was all kinds of fantastic. It was hilarious and heartfelt. Kristen Wiig is just gold. Kristen Wiig is absolute gold. Now, of course, Paul Feig directed that, but he also did a couple of other really successful films with Melissa McCarthy. He did Heat, that was really successful, did great with the audience and the critics, and made a good amount of money. He did My Spy, or not My Spy, it's just Spy that Melissa McCarthy did with Jason Statham.
I really like that movie.
Which was a movie that was much better than I thought it had any business being. And I remember I even delayed watching it, and I waited until some other people saw it, and they came back to say, John, it's really good. I'm like, seriously? I love Jason Statham and everything, but really? And it was really great. So anyway, what's going on here is Paul Feig was recently asked about whether he'd ever go back and do another Bridesmaids, go and revisit those characters again. And he basically gave the kibosh on it. Here's an excerpt he said more about it, but this is an excerpt of what he said.
Ooh.
He said, so to do a sequel, I think you're basically just going to have a funny wedding. And I've seen those movies a million times, and some of them are good, and some of them are like, okay, whatever. It's obviously up to Kristen Wiig. She's the keeper of the keys on that, because she, of course, wrote the film as well. But it would have to be something that you can emotionally engage in again, and not just go, it's Megan's crazy wedding in the Bahamas, and all kinds of hijinks happen. That could be funny, but I just think you need more for a movie to be great. All right, so that comes from Paul Feig talking about Bridesmaids. And listen, I get where he's coming from, because one of the things that I always say in the show, Rob, is that, look, the story is not there to serve the characters, and the characters are not there to serve the actors. The actors are there to serve the characters, and the characters are there to serve the story, right? I say that all the time. That being said, I think with comedy, I think that rule changes a little bit when it comes to comedy. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Bridesmaids, which I think is wonderful, it wasn't wonderful because of the emotional story between Kristen Wiig, and she's struggling, feeling that she's losing her best friend while her worlding's falling apart. All that stuff was good, and all that stuff added to the movie. Make no mistake about it. But in terms of a pure comedy, Rob, to me, the heart of this movie was the characters and their dynamic together. Because when you look at that scene, I mean, I know you remember the scene, Rob, but the scene that I nearly passed out in the theaters, I was laughing so hard. When all the girls go into the bridesmaids dress part thing to try on the bridesmaids dresses, but they had all ate the gray meat, and they all were starting to have their digestion problems. Oh my God, I seriously thought I was going to vomit. I was laughing so hard at that stuff. But that was all aside from the story, you know? It was just these characters, their dynamic, their chemistry, and how it worked. That's why when they were doing Hangover 2, even though Hangover 2 didn't work out all that well, but still, when they were doing Hangover 2 and people were saying, but you know, you've already done the story, I was just like, yeah, but I just want to go and hang out with those characters again for a couple of hours. You know, that's why Supernatural, to me, the story of Supernatural has not been all that strong for a few years, but I've still loved the show because just week to week, I just really love these characters and their fun dynamic together, and I just like hanging out with them. And I would suggest to Paul Feig that while it's true, if you're going to do Bridesmaids 2, I don't think you should base it, or, oh, look, there's another wedding and we're doing it all again, but just show us, come up with a story that just gives us an excuse to have these characters together again, doing the funny, because this at its heart was a comedy. And I think for comedies, I think the rules, Rob, I've always said this before, when it comes to comedy and horror movies, comedy and horror share this thing in common. In a comedy, you can do almost everything wrong in a movie. As a filmmaker, you can do almost everything wrong. But if you make the audience laugh, everything else is forgiven. Much like horror, you can make every wrong decision in making a horror movie, but if you make people feel creeped out watching the horror movie, a lot of that can be forgiven. And I think so with a comedy in a franchise like Bridesmaids, I feel like you could get away with a little bit more, but I don't know. Rob, you hear and read Kevin Feig's, Paul Feig. I keep wanting to say Feige. I keep wanting to say Kevin Feige.
I know.
Paul Feig's comments on this. What do you think about that? Do you think that a property like Bridesmaids is something they should push forward? Or do you think you should still follow really good sound filmmaking wisdom? Start with story. And if you've got story, then you move forward. And if you don't have good story, don't. How do you feel about this situation?
Look, I think I think he's right, because, you know, I thought Bridesmaids was hilarious. I loved it. And I keep thinking, you know, John, it's yesterday was the 31st anniversary of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And that came out in the summer of '89.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade turned 31 years old yesterday.
Oh my God. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Please continue.
And the
Wow.
summer of '89 had Ghostbusters 2 come out. And I remember, you know, I didn't like Ghostbusters 2 very much at all. And I loved the first Ghostbusters. And I remember just thinking, you know, unless you have a great story to tell, it's not enough to just try. I understand as a money-making proposition, maybe. But, you know, there's something about leaving something alone. I mean, Paul Feig wants to go off and make more movies. If you go back and you rehash Bridesmaids again, unless you had the greatest script in the world, you're going to wind up with The Hangover 2 or The Hangover 3, you know, where it's just the law of diminishing returns. And why do that? Why not spend your time making something that's new that could potentially be as good, if not better, than Bridesmaids that people haven't seen before? And I think it's really astute what he was saying. Now, do I think there could be other stories in that universe? And do I think the cast of that movie, the main characters, were great? I mean, the ensemble, the actresses in that film killed me, dude. Killed me. And I would love to see them, but why not get those same actresses together and tell some totally different story that isn't a sequel to Bridesmaids? And I think he's right. I like hearing him say that. He's not really like, yeah, I'm gonna go cash in. He because it doesn't always work.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Guys, question here for you is, what do you think about that? Do you think that even in something that is as pure of a comedy as, say, Bridesmaids, that like other filmmaking things, story should come first? Do you think maybe in comedy there should be a little bit more flexibility there, saying, hey, it's about the characters and their chemistry together? Do you like what Paul Feig's saying there? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know what you guys think. All right, guys.